Okay. Good morning. I'm Joe Reingold, and today is July 31st, 2020, and I'm here with Maria Cortez for an interview. And how are you today? How are you doing?
Good morning. It's Friday. It's a nice day outside. Everyone's healthy.
Thank God. Okay. So Maria, let's start by asking you, tell us a little bit about your family, whatever you know about the background, your grandparents, your parents, where they lived, what they did for a living, what they did for entertainment, etc., and if they were involved at all in the Jewish community.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting in terms of going back a few generations, which is very germane to how me and my family got to be here in Dallas today. I was born in Costa Rica, and one side of my family is indigenous Native Americans. That's on the maternal side. And on my father's side, my grandfather, Pedro Cortez, came from Spain. And that is where my Jewish heritage actually started. On my mother's side, they are Catholic. And they, on my grandfather's side, they met in Costa Rica. That's where it all started.
Very good. So how long did they stay there in Costa Rica before moving on?
Absolutely. So my heritage is that we had 2 generations in Costa Rica. And then a few years after I was born, in order to expand their education, my father was a physician, or he was trying to be, and my mother was in education. So they decided to come to the United States. And my father finished his schooling. They went on to have my little brother as well. So there were 3 of us. We lived in Minnesota for about 7 years. And you can imagine coming from Costa Rica, that was quite a cultural shock and a weather shock as well. So we actually spent some time in Minnesota and then California. And then for my education, that's actually what brought me to Texas. I ended up in Austin at the University of Texas.
When you were growing up, what type of activities did you enjoy? What did you get involved in? What were some of your interests in school?
Yes, it was in terms of school, it was anything to do with math or science. I had no comprehension of what that might mean in terms of a profession. But my parents were always adamant that my #1 job was being a good student. So that as I got older, I started to think about the practical applications of that. So as I started to look at what to major in college, my passion ended up being electrical engineering. And as I got more detailed into that, I started to study semiconductor fabrication, which is a derivative of what I do now. Now I help develop computer chips here in Dallas in the semiconductor industry.
Very good. I'm going to back you up for a minute. Tell us a bit about how you got to California. Where did your family settle there? Where did you live there? And were they involved at all in any kind of Jewish or civic activities or communal activities?
Yeah. So what took us to California, and so I was a tween, I suppose, at the time, and my father had finished his schooling, so that is where his medical practice ended up beginning. It's in Southern California. We were outside of San Diego. It was a great fit for my family because it was much more of the closer to the tropical environment of what we were used to. I would say that at the time, my parents were just starting to get on their feet, learning to still acclimate to a new country, and raising 3 children at the same time. So I still remember back then, it was a very, I think it was a very vulnerable time, making sure that they would be able to stay in this country. So I don't know that there was a lot of extra time for leisure and civic involvement. But at home, they absolutely set very strong, they were very strong role models for our heritage and the values that we had in our family with me and my two brothers.
Did you or your siblings attend any kind of Sunday school or religious school?
To some extent, this is interesting because at the time the only private schools that existed were hosted by the Catholic community. So that was very interesting for me to grow up in an environment of theology. So I would say from an early age, I had a very strong exposure to an emphasis on theology, and it was based in the Catholic school teachings.
Okay. So did you get involved with any kind of religious organization or anything like that on campus at University of Texas? What were your interests there?
Yeah, the very strong involvement that I would say that I started having in the Jewish community. I don't know if it's very different for many people, but when my first child, Jordan, my view just changed completely, and I wanted to immerse him in this amazing community. And although at the time I had been a member at the local synagogue, and I would say that is where my involvement took a step function up and increasing. It was really my motivation to have my kids, now I have two children, Jordan and Justin, is to have them firmly embedded and supported by this community.
Okay. After college, your path led you here, but did you consider any other places or any other jobs besides coming to Dallas? And if so, what did you consider? And once you got here, tell us a little bit about some of your work projects that were very memorable to you.
Okay, so right out of college, my first job was in Houston, so I still got to stay in Texas. I was there for a couple years, went back to Austin for a few more years, and then a job promotion brought me to Dallas. And that's where I have been since 2000, actually since around 2000. And my work projects is fascinating to me because I develop computer chips which are used in really anything around us that has electricity. So this camera that we're on right now, or the lighting in a house, or even my car that I drive, they all use the technology that I develop with my semiconductor computer chips.
And once getting to Dallas, what were your impressions of the city itself, as well as, if you can remember, the Jewish community back then?
Yeah, that was when I came here. One of the very first phone calls I made was to the different synagogues in the area, and I think within 2 weeks of moving to Dallas, I was a member of Sheriff Israel, and the welcoming environment and all of the community activities that they had was a big part of how I started to form my network and really feel welcome into this community. I would say that was a huge impact to me when I first moved to Dallas.
So what did Sheriff offer you, and specifically, why was it the place that you felt the most comfortable?
So in terms of when I first got there, there was so many opportunities for learning, and then in addition to that, one of the things that I was looking for is knowing that I was going to be starting a family. I looked for the events that they had surrounding the children and all the educational opportunities, both social and from a theology standpoint. They had a very, very strong curriculum and opportunities to get involved.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your married life. Where and when were you married? How did you meet your spouse? What did you guys do as newlyweds settling in here? And how has your family grown since then?
So I was married in 1997 and met in Austin. And then now it's very changed environment, which is being in Dallas with two teenage boys. And as a single mom, I would say that one of the things that really impacted me was one of the things that I have counted on tremendously is my friends in the Jewish community, is how supportive everybody has been. People talk about it takes a village, and I will say, as a single mom in Dallas, my Jewish friends have definitely been part of my village.
What are your children involved in at this point, and how old are they?
Yeah, so I have my oldest, Jordan, is 19 years old, and he is in college. One of the first groups he became involved in is actually Hillel at SMU, where he attends school. And he is dual majoring in music composition and pre-med biology, a specialty in neuroscience. My younger son, Justin, is at one of the local high schools. He is 16 years old, and he is at Green Hill.
Okay. Is he involved in anything in the community, Jewish or otherwise?
Yeah, so he is a huge fan of volleyball and tennis. From a sports perspective, those definitely occupy a lot of his dedication. And then academically, his interests are in biomedical engineering. So as we are in this quarantine environment, he has been spending a lot of hours taking extra biomedical engineering courses online.
Okay. And what about your immediate family? Are your parents still in California, and where are your siblings now?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll start with my parents, and they have lived just a few miles away. They moved to Dallas to be closer to the grandkids when the kids were around, I guess my oldest was around 5. And they both are very active and still work. My mom very often still makes challah for us every Friday, because she's a chef, and so she definitely helps out with our cuisine here at the house. My 2 brothers, I have an older brother, Roberto Cortez, and we are lucky enough to have him in Dallas. He's just a few miles away with his daughter Gabby, and he is in the finance world. And my younger brother, Ernesto Cortez, is in the Army. He graduated from West Point. He's deployed to Afghanistan about 14 times at this point. And now he has a command in Georgia, is where he, his wife, and his 2 kids reside.
Okay. You've been here about 20 years now, give or take, 20 years. So tell us, from your perspective, how has Dallas changed, and in what ways?
That's interesting. I think that my view of Dallas is also hugely informed by the diverse group of people I come in contact with at work. The work in the tech industries is very, very multicultural. So I interface with people that are from Germany, are from India, China, and Japan, and then from various parts of the United States. So I would say that is the biggest thing that I've noticed since I first started in Dallas.
And what about the Jewish community? Have you seen differences in it from the time you got here until now?
Yeah, that is, in terms of changes, I have to give thought to that. I've seen it expand, certainly. We have been active in both Anshe Torah and Shereth Israel. And when Anshe Torah first started, it was a very, very small synagogue, and it went on to grow to over 1,000 families. And then I see the role that the JCC has taken in terms of bringing the community together in Dallas. I would say the expansion of the Jewish community and just having so many options, especially for families, to bring everyone together. I would say that that is the biggest change I've observed.
Have you taken advantage of some of the things offered there?
Yes, absolutely. I would say that my kids going through their bar mitzvahs. My older son went through his bar mitzvah at Anshe Torah, and then my younger son at Sherith Israel. And that is such a huge milestone in their lives. And we got to do that through the community, each of those two synagogues. That is something that to this day, going through that experience, they still talk about it, how they still draw from that. Whether it was learning their Torah portion, or whether it was the volunteer project that they ended up doing. I know that those experiences really, they're still woven into their fabric. It was a big milestone for them.
Very good. I know you mentioned earlier that your parents were your role models, but I wanted to get into that a little bit deeper. Mm-hmm. And besides your parents, if you can think of anybody else that might have been a role model for you. If not, that's fine. Just expand upon what you feel about your parents being role models.
Yeah, I'll touch upon my parents, which is that being an immigrant family and moving around the United States quite a bit, we ended up, the five of us, just being a very tight-knit family unit. And I look back and I remember very distinctly that we didn't know if we were going to be able to remain in this country for a variety of reasons, whether or not we were going to be able to get our green cards, or whether or not we were going to be able to survive financially. We really lived and died by each other. And so as I saw my parents go through that with such grace and honor, I look back and I know that my brothers and I never really comprehended the pressure, the struggles that they were under. I remember before I started a family just feeling like it was a very, very high bar that my parents had set in terms of being there for my own kids.
Is your dad still in practice here in Dallas? Has he?
My father works for the Department of Defense, and so I have a very strong military family. And so he works for the Department of Defense, and so he is for his work based out of Fort Hood, just a little bit south in Killeen. And my mother still actively works as well. She started out in education, and that was a big influence upon me and my two brothers in just terms of prioritizing education. But she went on to pursue her love, which is the culinary arts. And so she has her own catering business, and she's an executive chef.
Good. This is a good place for that.
Exactly. I think Dallas definitely has a lot of foodies, and many of them have found her.
Great. Maria, what are you the most proud of? Think about that for a minute.
Yeah, I actually think about that a lot, and without hesitation, I've actually told my children that it's not unclear to me, why Hashem has me on this earth, and it's for them. I truly believe that is my purpose in being here. Part of me being here for my children, and especially being the mom of two young men, I think very actively about the example that I'm setting as a professional woman, and just as someone who's independent. And it was fascinating to hear my son talk about the role models in his life, and it was interesting to me that without giving much thought to it, he listed out his grandmother and me. And so I take that very seriously, as I feel like I'm putting forth an example and hopefully raising two young men that that have very positive views on the wonderful women they've had in their lives, such as my mom.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. Tell me, is there anything else about your family that we have not included so far that you'd like to add?
It's it's maybe to expand upon is,
Sure.
my view. I think we all have many roles in this world, right? Number one, I'm a mom. I'm also an electrical engineer. I do firmly believe I'm making this world a better place through the work that I do. I feel like I have God-given gifts, and I'm really proud of the way that I've found a way to utilize them. One of the other things that really has enormously just informed my upbringing is what I mentioned before about I didn't start out being born into a military family, but definitely that's what my family evolved into. So I have an older brother who served in the Army. I have an uncle who served in the Air Force. My father, who is a doctor, went on to bring his services to the Department of Defense in support of the military. And I have a younger brother who, as I mentioned, graduated from West Point and has spoken so eloquently to me and to my children about why the military is a calling for him. And it's definitely a role of service that he's chosen. So I think any family that has been up at night after seeing a news brief of someone getting hurt or a fatality overseas can really testify that it changes one's perspective and one's approach to life, and what to be grateful for, what to stand for in principle. So I would say that that's actually one of the biggest additional influences that has informed just the decisions that I make for me and my family.
I didn't touch on this, but I'm wondering if you could tell us what the road was like, if any of the members of your family on the road to citizenship here in the United States.
That's a great one. I remember so distinctly the day that I got my citizenship. I was a teenager at that time, and I remember thinking with such great relief that I get to stay now. And I was old enough to comprehend the implications of that. So I, as a teenager, went through a citizenship class and learned even additional details and history about the government and the different politics and the hierarchy in our government. And when I went to take the test in person, I was so nervous and had just the nicest man that really put my mind at ease and let me know that it was a celebration. So I was very lucky in my experience that it was very, very welcoming. And what a mindset change it was for me that as a teenager and someone who had lived the majority of my life in the United States, that it wasn't until that moment that I really had any sense of security that I was going to be able to stay in this country.
Did your parents go for theirs before you or at the same time?
We all did it at the same time. And the only one that was exempt from the process was my younger brother, because he was the only one out of the 5 of us that was born in the United States.
Very good. Well, we're happy you did it. Yeah.
No, it makes it's often that I just connect that to what's taking place in our communities in this day and age. It's um, I don't know that I would have made it. I would have made the cut in this day and age. So I'm grateful for having come to this country at a different time that I was able to stay.
Right. Well, you've had a wonderful interview, but is there anything else that you would like to add and tell us about that we have not touched on yet?
I think one thing I talked about my grandfather on my father's side, so my paternal grandfather coming from Spain to Costa Rica. And it was very interesting as I explored my Jewish heritage to do some research on that. And interestingly, in Costa Rica, it's such a welcoming community, and most of the Jewish community that's there actually is comprised of Polish immigrants that came prior to World War II. But my grandfather actually had a different journey. He came post World War One, and he came from Spain. So it was a little bit of a different journey in terms of belonging to the Jewish community in Costa Rica. But you know, it's obviously every country has a very different culture. And one of the things that I noted is that in Costa Rica, there were so many Jewish role models. Like just as an example, in politics, there have been numerous vice presidents who were Jewish, and we had a first lady that was Jewish as well. So to contrast that to being here in the United States, which I think all countries are on a journey of acceptance and diversity, but it was very interesting for me to have two country cultures to contrast.
Was your grandfather's background Sephardic? And did you learn from that?
Yes, it absolutely was. And so in any case, there are some very specific cultures that he brought with him. But it is also interesting that in Costa Rica, when he came over, and even when I was young, there wasn't the internet, so there wasn't necessarily a broad understanding of where some habits or traditions came from. And it wasn't until more recent history that a lot of people in Costa Rica understood that the habits and traditions that they had in their family, even people that were Christian, they came to understand that it actually came from the Jewish immigrants that came from Europe and adopted to the Catholicism of the country. So they didn't really understand where the tradition came from of baking bread on Friday, as an example. And as time went on, they realized that those were traditions that that came from their Jewish heritage. So that's been a real exploration that Costa Rica has been very proactive about exploring.
Good. Well, we certainly are proud and glad that a good number of members of your family are here with you, around you, and we hope that they continue to thrive, and you do as well. And we appreciate you giving your time for this interview. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
All right.
And have a great Friday.
Thank you. You too. Appreciate it.
Be well.